the Queen Iyoba Idia. I want to talk about her and kind of have some conversations around some of the specifics around it. So I hope that you are doing well, and I wanted to just kind of come in and kind of continue our conversation. There's so many important people in history, and so many important people in African history and in Black history that we just don't know about, we just don't talk about. And sometimes they're tough conversations to talk about as we think about things that are in our more recent past. There are tough conversations we have, but our children need to know these things. We need to understand the concepts that a lot of people taught in their lives that they still teach and that can help inform us today. So I want to talk about this young lady here, this woman who was a queen in Iyoba in the Edo tradition, Queen Idia. And if there are any pronunciations you want to add below, please add below. But I want to talk about Queen Idia a little bit. I want to kind of jump into having a conversation about her and who was she? Why was she significant? Why do we remember her in African history? And why is this one of the most iconic, pieces of art in African history? Really, this artwork is of her, and it's one of the most iconic things that we have in African art, just period, just period. And I think it's a beautiful piece. So I want to talk about her. Before I jump in, I want to mention a couple of things really quickly. I want to talk about what the resources that I have for those who are members on my website and those who are members via YouTube. I want to thank you so much for being a member. And as a member, I want to kind of give you an idea and show you what you get as a membership. And it's just $4.99 a month. It starts at $4.99 a month. I want to show you what you get. And I hope that you'll tell people about this and kind of share this with folks if you're interested in learning and reading more and kind of digging into. So I really appreciate those who support. So thank you for being a member. For those who are member, I want to show you what you get. There's a library of resources that you have access to, that I give you access to if you are a member here on YouTube. As I mentioned, it's $4.99 a month. And you can see the kind of resources that are there now. The library has art and timelines and courses and various things like that. So the resources, one of the things you'll see now that's up there is some white papers and research papers on people like King Sahure and Dozier, as well as a history of the Edo people, which is what we'll be talking about today. I'll be talking about that resource in today's broadcast, if you will. So that's there. Also just, access to some artwork, a lot of the artwork that I'll share, but access to artwork that you might want to look at that's pretty, that you can check out. In addition to that, there's online courses. So online courses with King Taharka, with Shep and Wepet, the Kemetic calendars, how did Kemet get started, courses that you can take that have like quizzes associated with it. And also all my courses have also many textbooks. So there are textbooks that go along with the course so that you can read and do your own research and, kind of take notes and dig into this, and not just, an hour or two, long video. I also have resources that go with it to support different types of learning. So that's also available, online courses, in addition to the other resources that are there. Timelines. So we have a timeline of the Old Kingdom. I'll be doing one with the Middle Kingdom soon, the New Kingdom. You can download these resources. They're available for you to download if you're a member, as well as a library. And the library will get into specific resources related to ancient Kush, like I mentioned, King Taharka, Taharka, Shep and Wepet, as well as a library of resources on ancient Kemet. So you can kind of get an idea and see what the resources there on my website. And as I mentioned, these are for people with access, for people who are members, who are member here on YouTube. And I very much appreciate it. I thank you. It's just $4.99 a month. It really helps me continue to do this. Your support makes a big difference. But in addition to that, you're getting a lot for it. You're getting a lot of resources. And I know a lot of people have a lot of things to offer, but I don't know anybody who's quite offering this much in terms of resources that you can read on a regular basis, that you can download and take your study of ancient Kush, ancient African history, and dig deeper with it. So I pray that you take a look at it and that you tell your friends about it, and that you join me here, join my channel membership on YouTube. There's a way to connect it in the link below, and you can join for just $4.99 a month. I very much appreciate it. So today we're going to go through one of the resources that's on the website. One of the resources, this resource right here that's on the website, we're going to go through that resource, the history of the Edo people, and kind of talk a little bit about that, because, as we talked a little about that yesterday, and we talked about the Obas and the whole history of the Ogeso dynasty within the Edo religion history, if you will, the rulers of the sky, if you will, who were the first part of their political structure that we kind of look at today, and then the Obas, who are the next part, that are still in power today and still divine rulers in the Edo state in Nigeria today. But when we talk about it, so we talked about that yesterday. We're going to talk a little bit about the Iyobas, and the Iyobas are queen mothers, and you're looking right here at the first Iyoba. This is the woman who was the first Iyoba, and as we kind of think about it and talk about it, she held a very significant place in African history and in the Edo people. So as we jump into talking about her, we start to realize that the whole concept of queenship, the whole concept of queen mothers, there have been all types, as ups and downs as it relates to females and males and looking at that balance of power. And not a lot of kingdoms, and frankly, even today, not a lot of places get it right. Not a lot of places look at divine, feminine and masculine expressions of God and see them as being equal, see them as being expressions of God, the expressions of God that they are, and that we ought to respect them. Not a lot of places have gotten that right. And we don't really do it right today, but there are places, but a lot of places in Africa have examples of women who have risen to amazing heights spiritually, spiritual leaders, leaders of armies, leaders of nations, leaders in their own right. And this is one of the women who stands out in African history. So as we talk about her today, we're going to kind of jump in that. And I want to appreciate and thank you for those who are joining. God bless you. Thank you so much. Aaron Thompson, thank you much for joining. I very much appreciate you. Shalom, peace to you as well. I hope that you are doing well. Thank you so much for joining. So as we jump in to talk about her, we'll kind of jump into the resource that I was talking about in the history of the Edo people. And as we jump into that, we start to get ourselves. Let's get a time frame. Let's kind of go back and look at a time frame that we're talking about here, because when you think about the Edo people, you can go back thousands of years. You can go back some 6,000 years tracing linguistic history and things of that nature, and you can go back to some 900 A.D., well over 1,000 years ago, and start to see the first dynasty that becomes a political structure that we're kind of related to today. And that was the rulers of the sky, if you will. And then you see a change, if you will, around 1200 AD, where you find the Iyobas. And the Iyobas are the divine rulers who are still in power today. There's still an Iyoba today who's there at the head of the Edo State in Nigeria, still very much there today. And we think about this time period right here around 1200. That's when the shift comes in the Edo Empire, when you have a new king that's crowned as Oba, a gentleman who came perhaps from the Yoruba tradition, who hoped to mate with an Edo woman and basically inaugurated the first Edo who was there, the first Oba who was there, and that set off a rulership and a political structure of a succession of very successful rulers for a long period of time, an extended period of time, to the point that even though they were attacked by the British at one point in time and fell and came back, they're still around today holding up their traditions, well over 1,000 years later. And as we talk about this lady right here, we're going to be talking about this time period a couple hundred years after the Oba start. A few hundred years after that, when we get into the very early 1500s. Now, in the early 1500s, the Portuguese are already coming up and down the coast to West Africa. The beginnings and the parts of the Atlantic enslavement and human trafficking is starting to take place, and they're trying to make inroads into parts of Africa. We'll talk about that. And as we talk about that, it's so important for us to know, for you and I to know, that there are African kingdoms and societies and political organizations that are around obviously well before any contact with Portuguese or English or anything like that. They're around well before. They're around before Muslims. They're around before, for tens of thousands of years. You have Black people in Africa having societies, having their own languages, having their own trade, having their own everything, and their own traditions. And so when we think about that, we can't just wrap it up within the context of Europeans, right? So we really just must know that. So when we think about the Edo people, know that they have a history that stretches very far back prior to Islam, prior to even ancient Kemet being around. You have thousands of years ago, you have them stretching back 6,000 years ago or more. You have the people who were speaking the Edo language in that part of Africa, in that part of West Africa, and people all over the world doing things that people do, having societies. It's very important for us to recognize that and understand it, because so many times we look at them as if they are just characterized by the Europeans that they met, and not understanding that they had their own traditions, their own beliefs, their own customs, their own way of looking at God. All that was taking place in the Edo state, long before Europeans came, and long before some of the things that we look at today. So as we start to kind of look at this and look at Queen Idia, we get a chance to kind of look at her and talk a little bit about her relationship with her son and her relationship to her people. So somewhere thereabouts around the early 1500s, very late 1400s, you have the man who will become her husband, who is a ruler, and he's one of the Obas. He's a ruler there, and we're talking about the setting is present day Nigeria. So think about South Central Nigeria, where Benin City is, and just, oh, by the way, just to remind you, the country of Benin and Benin City in Nigeria are two separate entities. The Benin City that's in Nigeria is a part of the Great Benin Empire, the Benin Kingdom, for which we're talking about today, the Edo people. That's part of them. And that name Benin comes from basically a corruption of the word Ubini, which was the indigenous word that was used to refer to them and refer to their area and their city long before, the Portuguese got there and things of that nature. But it was the Portuguese who started to kind of corrupt that word and call it Benin. So when we talk about the Benin and city and we talk about the Edo people in Nigeria, we're talking about the area of Nigeria and the Great Benin Empire of antiquity, of which she is a part. When you talk about the country of Benin, that's separate from this area. And this is just a country that took on the same name as Benin because it was a popular waterway in that area. And that's really the area of the Kingdom of Dahomey and things of that nature. So they're two separate people, if you will, two separate entities. So she is around at a time in the early 1500s, and she's married. She has a husband, and her husband is one of the kings. So this right here, the Oba Azula, this was her husband, and he was a powerful man. He was a powerful man who helped to expand the whole territory of the Edo people. He was a powerful man, and she had a son with him. And when her son, was born and her husband died, obviously, as you probably would guess, there was some battles for who would take over his kingship, who was going to be the next ruler, if you will, of the Edo people. And so he had a challenge with his older brother. His older brother was a Harriet. And Harriet was the older brother, and Aseji was King Idia's son. So he was the son. He was the person that she wanted to basically, obviously, take control over. But he had a challenge. His older brother was strong. His older brother had a lot of people as a part of his coalition, if you will. God bless you. Thank you so much for joining. His older brother had a lot of people that was a part of his coalition. So if you kind of think about it, we're thinking about Esseji here, who is her son, and his older brother Ahuran. And so these are the people who are vying for the throne, if you will. These are the people who are vying for the throne. And so she's in a situation where her son is the younger brother. Her son would like to gather a coalition, and the Edo state is pretty powerful right now. We're talking about like the early 1500s. The Edo state is pretty powerful right now. And there's a lot of things that could be done to kind of usurp what's taking place. And so as she starts to do this, she starts to realize that the ability to help her son become a ruler was just not going to happen on his own. He wasn't able to get the type of support he needed from the far reaches of his kingdom, the place that would become his kingdom, because his older brother had such a stronghold and already had a lot of people on his side. So what she did is some remarkable things. And I'd love to hear you put down in the comments more specifics around this, because there's so much legend around what she did. I'd love to hear more about it. And if you guys have more specifics, please put it down in the comments. I'd love to hear it. So the story is that she went around the kingdom. She literally went from place to place because she had been married to the king. She had been married to the Oba. She really went from place to place, building an army up for her son. She went from village to village to small cities, from area to area, working with the rulers in the area, the local rulers, getting them to be on her side. And obviously they knew who she was and of her, getting them to be on her side and against the older brother. And to basically not only provide support, but to provide men, to literally provide an army that would be able to be risen up in support of her son, because she knew a battle was coming. And so she went throughout the land and literally built up an army that she helped to bring back in support of her son. And there are times where they talk about her actually going into war and to battle with the army, or being very closely connected with the strategy that was going on as the wars would take place. So she went around the kingdom to build up an army for her son and built up local support. So when it came time for her son, this is almost like, when you think about it, I'm telling the story, but when you think about it, if you know the story of Ausar and Auset, and the story of Haru, how Haru is fighting his older uncle, and he's fighting his uncle, and his uncle kills his dad, and that the Kemetic story of Ausar, Auset, and Haru. This sounds very similar. I'm saying this, and I'm not making this up. This literally sounds very similar to the Kemetic tale of Ausar and Auset, where Auset, the mother of Haru, prepares her son with the consultation of Tahuti to fight against his uncle and to kind of take the throne, if you will. And so this is a real life situation of kind of like a mother, almost like an Auset figure, doing what it took to make sure her son would be able to take the throne. And apparently all the stories that are told about her talk about her wisdom. They talk about how wise she was, how politically savvy she was, to be able to talk to the people and to convince them to be on her side, and to make sure they were able to send men, get skin in the game, bring people who were actually willing to fight. And when it came time to fight, that she actually helped to go to the battlefield and to provide strategies. Because so not only did she help to build an army for her son, she developed spies, a whole whole network of spies that were planted throughout the kingdom, so that when the older brother, the person, their enemy, if you will, their adversary, would move his troops or do certain things, she had messages coming back to her and funneling to her son, so they would know where his weaknesses were, what he was doing, where he had planned to do. So she had a network of spies that she also developed. Sounded a lot like Harriet Tubman to me as well in her spy activity. The other thing that she was said to do and believed to do was that she was a spiritualist. She was connected with God and she was connected with the ancestors. So they very much believe that when she prayed for something, when she used divination, when she called on the ancestors, that she had the power and the connection to make things happen. So when she went to battle and was there on the battlefield or present at the battle when it took place, it actually made the men on her side or on her son's side more invigorated. And it made the men on the other side somewhat scared because they believed she had the power. They believed that she was spiritually endowed and spiritually strong, so that if she was on their side and praying for them and doing divinations and interceding on their behalf, that the adversaries had no chance. So it was also a psychological thing that was going on as well, and a spiritual thing. So she was a spiritualist. She had a network of spies, and she helped to raise an army for her son, essentially, as he was fighting his older brother for the throne. And as these battles continued to take place, eventually her son won. Her son became victorious, and he took the throne. He took the throne from his older brother and was able to kind of either exile him or kill him, get him away, and they were able to establish the throne. And as soon as he established, no sooner than he established the throne, he was invaded by another enemy somewhat to the north, who saw it as an opportunity that maybe he might be weakened, and another invasion took place. And she was also strategic and helpful in making sure that the army was prepared strategically to take on this new threat that was a real threat as well. So when this happened, there was a custom, and you guys can tell me about this custom if you're familiar with it. There was a custom in the time at the time where the queen mother, when a new person was crowned Oba, the queen mother was either kind of exiled, in some cases I've read killed, just removed away from the son, because sometimes they thought the queen mother would try to take over power. In this case, her son Isiji said, no, I'm not doing that. In this case, he was so thankful to what his mother did, and so instrumental that she was in terms of helping him to get the kingdom, that he created a title. So his title was Oba, and he created a title for his mother, and the title was Iyoba. So that's why you see the word Iyoba, and her name was Idia. So Iyoba was a title that was given to the queen mother. It was a new title that he created. He's like, no way am I killing my mom or exiling her. She got her own palace. She got her own castle, and they did live apart, and she ended up having her own staff. So instead of exiling or removing the idea of the queen mother or thinking that she was a threat, he created an additional title for his mom, and she became the first Iyoba. She was the first Iyoba in Edo history. And she literally was someone who, the first and most famous Iyoba. She was the first and most famous one because of all the things she did to help her son get to the throne. And as she did that, one of the things that he did was, not only did she get her own palace, she ended up having her own army that was at her service. She ended up having her own servants that were at her service. She ended up having her own staff, and this was unusual at the time in that area. What they were doing with respect to Queen Mother, this was an unusual thing to do. And not only that, around this time, you start to see that they are casting these beautiful bronze casts. If you look at the bronze art and artwork of the Benin Empire, it's remarkable. And this is an example of the face of an Oba, and it's a beautiful commission. And one of the things that they would do is they would have the previous Oba, when they passed away, they would have these bronze beautiful artwork cast in honor of the king. And when she became the Iyoba, one of the things they put in place is she had her own bronze work. She had her own artwork. And so she could also commission artwork to be done in favor of her, or maybe in favor of her ancestors, because she was considered to be a very important spiritual person, spiritualist in the country. And these artworks were connections with the ancestors. So, and they were considered to have special powers, and they were considered to be used in special ceremonies. So this mask right here is a mask done of her. It's a mask of Queen Idia, the Iyoba Idia, and it's a remarkable, beautiful mask. And it's believed that maybe her son may have worn it, and in certain ceremonies honoring his mother, that he may have worn it. That may have been one of the reasons or one of the uses for the mask. But it's something, it becomes an iconic piece of artwork. You may have seen it. You may not have known what you've seen. When I first saw it, I didn't know what it was. I just know it was famous, and I had seen it before, but I wasn't 100% sure like what it was quite when I first kind of really got a good look at it. But it is a work of ivory of her, and it's a remarkable piece. It kind of tells you the extent of the artwork. how seriously they took their art, the religiousness associated with it. And a lot of the artwork in the Benin bronzes have very serene looks. They have very peaceful, very serious yet peaceful looks on their face when you see the artwork, and you can kind of just see that come across in what they put forth, and with the people who were the artisans, what they did. And so she becomes the first Iyoba. She becomes the first and the most famous one because of all she did in raising the army and in helping support her son actually becoming an Oba, to the point where, after her, successfully, even up until today, there have been Iyobas. So every Oba who was crowned after her son began to acknowledge their mother as a queen mother, and their mother got the title of Iyoba, just like Idia did. They got the title of Iyoba, even so much to the person who's in Iyoba now. The Oba now, his mother is the Iyoba today, and I believe the person who is the Oba now, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think his mother's passed away. I think she passed away before he took the throne, and he gave her the title of Iyoba posthumously after her death. So she still is the Iyoba, even though she's passed away, because the idea is that the Iyoba and the Obas and the ancestors, the spirits, are still with you, and they're still very much powerful, helping you to rule a kingdom, helping you to work for your children, helping the nation move forward and prosper. So this is kind of the long and short of the story of the first Iyoba, Queen Idia, and her remarkable story and how she supported her son. So I just wanted to share that with you. Like I said, this resource is going on my website. If you are a member, you have access to us now. It's only $4.99 a month. I very much thank you and appreciate you listening and sharing it with me, and I'll be back with you soon. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.